Robert Horton is a Seattle native, has worked as a professional artist for the past 30 years. He works in pen and ink, watercolor, acrylic, airbrush, as well as glass blowing. Received his AA and S degree in advertising art from Seattle Central Community College. Has coursework in life drawing, glass blowing, theater set design, and as a community volunteer. Several years ago, Robert displayed a prominent art exhibition called Souls of Sweetness, Scenes of Haiti at Gallery 110, where we were both showing our work.
Yeah.
I think it was right before that I left the gallery, because I came and saw your show that following first Thursday, the Haiti show. So that was downtown Seattle, and the show featured a vivid display of artworks from the beautiful country of Haiti. Years later, he assembled a powerful exhibition called American History X that celebrated the rich contributions of African Americans in American history. He has featured his work in numerous art galleries, exhibitions throughout Seattle and the Northwest over the past 25 years. He currently shows his work with the local art group Onyx Fine Arts Collective. So let's give him a nice warm welcome to Green River. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you all for coming in and visiting my show this past several weeks. As Sarah said, my name is Robert Horton, born and raised here in Seattle, and welcome to be Black and Bold, Imagery of Black Americans in Art. And so, like Sarah says, we have relationships in the past with Gallery 110. She called me up, I guess it was last year, to do a show, and so this is my presentation of my show here for this for the past couple of months, and I'm very pleased of how this turned out, and I'm also pleased that you came along. And what I want to do is just kind of go around a little bit with some of these pieces of works, and also explain a little bit how they come about. The process, the colors, the design of some of these pieces, and the history of these pieces. What this exhibit is mostly about is I've always been doing this for the past 15 to 20 years as far as doing historical pieces of work and gathering information on Black Americans here in this country and also throughout the world, in Africa and the Caribbean, that type of thing. And sometimes those cross-sex each other. And sometimes certain events that will happen here will affect things that happen overseas. Sometimes things happen overseas affect events that happen here. But I'm going to start up with this piece here. This one's called Secretariat. And for those of you who don't know, Secretariat was a Triple Crown winner and one's considered probably the most prestigious horse to run the Kentucky Derby. I guess it's back in the 70s, early 70s. And I guess some older folks who watch horse racing, Secretariat was pretty much like a Michael Jordan of horse racing. It was a spectacular horse that won each races for a large number of distance and speed. And there hasn't been horse since then that had the distance and speed to win its races as much as Secretariat. And what this corresponds with is that during the early parts of the Kentucky Derby, there were black disc jockeys who ran the horses in the Kentucky Derby. And interesting enough, they won the first, they won the first 25 to first 15 races of the Kentucky Derby. And this was back in the late 1800s when the Kentucky Derby started. Some of these men were horse owners, became horse owners. Others were trainers. Others there's a few that were all three and ran the Kentucky Derby. Some of these men they won the Kentucky Derby several times. And what this means is that it's something that, I'm not sure if Kentucky Derby explains this itself at their facilities or not. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it's something where something historically situation that it means a great deal about how these men overcame odds and how they're able to train these horses and to run these horses and to become successful at what they do. It's very interesting that at times that we are right now about the obviously the CRT situation, history, people want to obscure history, and now they want to ban books and this type of thing. But it's very important that have this type of historical events to be displayed and shared, because it's obviously it's part of our American history here that's been happening for the past since the days of 1776, even before then. And so that's one thing that's important about my images that I've done. Let's see, let me go to, let me go to this particular piece here. This one is Paul Coffey, and Paul Coffey was, I guess he was born into slavery around the Boston, Massachusetts, Connecticut area. As he gotten older, he was able to get work at the docks, at the loading docks of the shipping lanes down near the Boston and New York Harbor and the Connecticut area. And as he gotten older, he was able to work on the ships that is coming to different ports, bringing in obviously imports and export of goods. And eventually he was able to be like a deckhand, and then he able to progress up to several ranks within the shipping business. And he eventually became a captain of his own ship. And so he was one of the few captains of his own ship that was able to sail up and down the eastern coast of the States and trading goods and bringing goods in. And this is something else that's kind of obscured from history, where a lot of times what I do is I try to look for stories that has not been told. And this is one of them. And it's interesting to find out that how much information that's been left out of different curriculums in the state's history, in the United States history here, especially that deals with of my people or any other group. You could say it's the same thing about the Japanese Americans, the Chinese Americans, any other group, as far as there are certain events that's been happening underneath our feet that kind of has a great deal of consequences is once it be told. And this is one of them where I was also one of the things that I really enjoyed about this is that I was able to process a lot of my information through books and through newspaper clippings and through stories that I had read. And obviously, as you can see there, a book called Black Jacks, which is a book about blacks and former slaves in maritime history, sailing up and down the coast, coming across towards the Americas, in South America, in North America, even from the European countries as well, about all these men and women who worked on the docks, and also men and women who worked along the shipping lanes and through transportation, even through slavery times. They were able to work on these docks and on the shipping. And so that's a very powerful information that I gathered here. Let me see one more here. Let me go through. Let me go over here real quickly. Excuse me. This one here, these two pieces There's one that's called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, 1 and 2. And this is an interesting story here. It's about the American Revolution. And there's a lot of factual information that's been left out or obscured throughout history. And one of them was that the first casualty of the American Revolution was actually a former slave and a free black man named Crispus Attucks. He was the first casualty of the American Revolution. The second thing was that George Washington was, in fact, have trouble winning the war. And so he decided to enlist free black men or enslaved black men and women into his army. And one of the things was the changeover from that was the Battle of Trenton, in which obviously that famous painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware into Trenton, and that was like the first true big victory for General George Washington. But there's something else that was happening, is that the British decided to enlist free black men and also enslaved blacks into their army. And so it could have been possible in a battlefield that Washington's army and the British army were fighting in a battlefield, and you could have Washington's men, enlisted black men in his military, and also the British enlisted black men fighting the same battle in the same field. Now, this also could have happened into the American Civil War with the Union Army and the Confederates. And so this is what's a prime example as far as a number of black Americans being involved into the military since the days of General George Washington. And so they were involved in just about every single war in American history. My dad was enlisted into the military in the Navy back in the World War II. And I also have myself as several family members who retired from the military. And so this is also a very important information that has been obscured since in history.
Thank you.
My process of doing my work is I do a lot of research. A lot of times, like I said before, it's either through books, such as this one here, The Black Indians, which talks about the tribes and former slaves and enslaved who had a relationship with each other. And a lot of time, that is one of my sources. My other source is like newspaper clippings. Sometimes the Seattle Times does a story on a historical event that involves former slaves or a certain person of interest. Other times I use, sometimes I'll look for something within the internet or through Facebook or through like a certain story I read in a newspaper article or a certain character or a certain event. And so I started to research into that program. And what I do is like, I have an idea, certain words, certain situations. And so I kind of play it out in my head as far as, okay, what can I draw, what can I sketch? And so I do a quick little sketch and on my paper or something like that. And then I go back and refine it through the stories, through the storylines, or through the information that I gathered. And then once I have that, then my process is the colors, the design. I do several sketches of the design. I kind of redefined it. Sometimes I do like a quick color study of the process of what I want to do. With these pieces here, each one of these are done in acrylics. Most of them are done in acrylics, I should say. And this process is through, I work with airbrush, and what an airbrush is like a spray gun where you spray and paint in a certain area. And what I do is I cover the whole piece with a frisket film or paper, and then I cut out a shape, an area that I want to be sprayed, and then I spray like a certain amount of layers. Like this piece here, you can see her certain locks of her hair, but it's kind of has added depth to it with the certain strands of the paint, and so it kind of brings out the details of certain images, a lot of these images, and also the refinement of the forms of the piece. So that's the process of what I work with. I'm open for questions or anything like that, or any particular piece that somebody else.
The pancake lady.
Huh?
Tell us about the pancake lady. Is it Auntie Myra?
Yes.
That image, I love it.
This is a.
I'm Robin's sister, you guys.
Yeah. This one is interesting story on its own. Nancy Green was indeed the first Aunt Jemima. If you read that panel, how she was discovered in a Chicago, I think it was a World's Fair in Chicago, and she was discovered by the Mills brothers, and the Mills brothers were a group of, I guess, a food plant processing company or a bakery company around the St. Louis area, Missouri area around that time. And they developed this pancake product, and they were looking for somebody to be like a spokesperson or a model for their new campaign. And so they went to this World's Fair and seen Nancy Green doing this demonstration in cooking. What interested them was her demonstration with this cooking and also her personality as far as presenting the food, having people, engaging people into what she was doing. And so they decided to make her the first Aunt Jemima of her kind. And so she was recognized, interesting enough, later on as the first living icon of her time. And obviously they made several products from her character and what she represented. But what I did was I presented her as royalty. I did a cross between American and African royalty. As you see some of this embroidery in her cape and also in her dress. These are African motif Adinka designs, and obviously the pancake mix in those large bags over here. But I presented her with royalty because I wanted to be. This is somebody who is not quite the Harriet Tubman or the Frederick Douglass, so to speak. This is a woman that's involved with food, right? And so I wanted to be much more of a royalty because as I read, like I said before, I dove deep into her story, and it could possibly, if she were to receive her royalty payment from the Mills brothers, she could have been the first billionaire. And so that's what my presentation of her that I wanted to present. Any other questions?
I'm curious about this piece back there.
Which one? Over here?
This one. The one in the...
This one?
Yeah.
Oh. I'm going to do something about protest, civil rights, the process of justice and liberty in pursuit of freedom. And this one's called We the People. And I did this one a little bit different. My presentation was obviously the protests. I think this was done before the George Floyd situation. I think it was done several years prior to that. And what I wanted to do was I decided to use photo clippings that I found, and I tried to get them in various sizes, and I tried to present it, and I cut them out, and I pasted them on this hardboard. This is, I think this is clayboard, or what's it called? Yeah, clayboard or gesso board. And so it's a hard surface, and you could paint directly right on it, or you could do several different applications on it. With this, I decided to use these characters on my own design, and then as far as the protesters themselves, I tried to find images or photographs, obviously, of actual protests and gatherings of people throughout the world or throughout the country, and I decided to just kind of place them in a juxtaposition in certain areas. It was quite challenging a little bit because I had to find images that kind of that had the gestures and expressions of feelings about what the situation was going on at the times, and also too is trying to find the images that would fit into the certain areas of the background. And I tried to, and then once I was able to do that, I displayed a little bit of paint back there to just kind of blend it in a little bit, but still have these gentlemen and this woman to stand out as far as the leaders of the protest. And so I titled We the People, which actually means we the people. It doesn't mean a specific people, but it includes everybody. We the people. And what does that mean? What does that mean to you when this title says we the people? Obviously is in the Constitution, we the people. Does that mean everybody here, or does it mean a certain group, a certain people of elitists, or does that mean, what does that mean to you? We the people. And so that's the reason why I did that piece right there. Any other questions? Yes.
Your work is beautiful. It's really powerful, and these stories, I really appreciate you sharing some of these different stories because they do need to be told. And looking at these pieces, like I feel like the protest, like red, white, and blue, like you have a blue mouth. Like, it is American the protest. It is just to stand up. So, and I'm curious, like, because your colors are absolutely fantastic. Everyone, like, I'm drawn into the colors, like seeing it then the story. When you work, do you have your paintings? Because it looks like some of the paintings also talk to each other. Like they continue. In your process in your studio, do you have the paintings up too?
No, in my studio everything is trash, and I got stuff. Annie knows. She's been there. I have some pieces up when I'm working on. But other pieces are in storage behind. I have a little storage space at my house, and so. It's kind of interesting because sometimes I work with the same colors on one piece to another piece. So it kind of is like a travel along. And what I'm doing now is like that piece, like the Aunt Jemima piece over here, I kind of do like a cross-reference of Africa and America. And so that's another, like a cross-reference. A lot of times, like you said, I have the American flag along with the black pride flag, like red, black, and green. And so that kind of carries over in that piece there behind here, the black and beautiful one. And so I'm trying to, myself as an artist, I'm trying to cross-reference Africa and America and bring them along in a conjunction and try to explain, trying to expand that storyline. So it kind of goes back and forth. Yes?
So there's quite a few references to some Jacob Lawrence work and the stylistic quality that you do in here. I was wondering if you could speak to that just a little bit. In terms of your artistic influence.
Jacob Lawrence is one of my favorite artists. I follow him closely. I have several books by him. I met him a few times. I've won a few of his lectures when he was living and present. What I like about him was, it must have been about 20, 30 years ago, he had a show at SAM. And I went to that show. And one thing that impressed me about his work that he does, obviously he does a lot of series with his work. And he does, what he does with his work, he does a lot of series, and it's told like a storyline. You know, each panel is like a storyline. And with Jacob Lawrence, when I saw his exhibit there at SAM, one of the most powerful pieces was the Migration series. And a lot of that dealt with raw stories of riots, stories of people who suffered, stories of people who persecuted through the migration from the south to the north or even to the west. And one of the pieces that I saw was a small painting of a race riot. And as a black artist, myself, and plus many others, we love to be presented with our own stories of raw energy. And so when I saw that piece, that blew me away because you're never going to see something like that, especially at that time, 20, 30 years ago, of a painting of a race riot. It just, you just didn't want to see things like that type of situation like that, especially in a museum or a gallery or whatever. So that kind of clicks on me as well. But with Jacob Lawrence, I kind of took his style a little bit. You can see several of his pieces, especially from this piece and several others. And then I kind of enhanced it a little bit more. I think with Jacob Lawrence, he uses the same colors of all of his panels and in his work. And so I decided to use kind of similar style to his, and then I just kind of refined it over time on my own. And then I decided to use more depth with my images and with the characters, with the shading and the spraying of the layers. I think for Jacob Lawrence, it's much more flatter. He uses one color. He doesn't use that much shading or mixing of the paints, more or less, to get the depth. He pretty much uses like a flat tone to his pieces. And to this day, I still regard Jacob Lawrence as my influence, and I still look at his presentation of his books and his works over time, and it's just amazing of what he has done. Any other questions?
His wife is a pretty phenomenal.
Yes. Gwendolyn too. Yes.
Is wife still alive?
No,
I don't think so. I met her 10 years ago or so, and she was 90 at the time. So it's,
yeah. Any other questions? Anybody else?
All right. Thank you, Robert, so much for presenting your work for us.